Here I go, here I go, here I go. Yeah, here I go, here I go.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of the Take Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Burles, and of course, in today's episode, 2024 is here. This is the first podcast of 2024, and the UFC has so much to offer for this year. There are 3 fights already made, big title fights. We'll talk about those, of course. Conor McGregor announced his return to the octagon, and also another guy who is announcing his return, Jorge Masvidal, who I thought was personally done with the sport. But we have so much to unpack here. But the first thing I want to talk about is the potential of Leon Edwards fighting Islam Makhachev. Now, Leon Edwards announced he will be fighting at UFC 300, which everyone has been waiting to see who's going to be the title fight for that card. And personally, if Dana White wants to make this the biggest, the baddest card, he has to put Leon Edwards versus Islam Makhachev for the welterweight title, because Islam Makhachev has expressed interest in moving up to 170 to fight Leon Edwards. And I think that would just be such a good fight. Like, that would be amazing. Like, Islam this year beat Volkanovski twice, the best featherweight on the planet. And when he beat him the first time, Volkanovski was the number 1 pound for pound. Like, Islam is the real deal. Like, his kickboxing is elite. His punching is elite. He can still wrestle. He's like a bear. You cannot take him down. There's so many things Islam is good at. And for him to just knock out Alexander Volkanovski like that in the last fight, like, that's insane. Like, that's the craziest thing you'll ever see. And Volkanovski is not a bum. But Leon Edwards versus Islam Makhachev, that's what I want to see at UFC 300, because Leon Edwards announced that he will be fighting at UFC 300. So we'll see what else unpacks there. Another possibility for UFC 300 as well is former light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill making his return from the torn Achilles that he suffered in July. It was June or July, one of those days. It was in the summer. Now, Alex Pereira, as you guys know, is the light heavyweight champion of the world. He's been almost unbeatable. Like, the only guy to beat him in 2023 was Israel Adesanya, in my opinion, by a lucky punch, because he was getting mauled before that, but that's a different discussion. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill at UFC 300 would be insane. Now, I think personally Alex would destroy Jamal Hill, because Alex has this power right here. You put your hand and you move it this way. He has that crazy power to just knock somebody out with not barely even moving his arm. Like, it's actually a special trait that he has. And in my opinion, I think Alex Pereira is possibly the best knockout artist in UFC history. I think it's very possible. The amount of talent he has with that hand and that left hook, it's dangerous. Like, we've never seen a guy just knock out people the way he's doing. I mean, in his last fight, Yuri Prohaska, who was the former champion before he kind of tore up his shoulder, he knocked him out. Alex Pereira knocked out Prohaska pretty easily in the second round. That was a great fight, but Pereira's power just is so incredibly scary. And I'm going to throw this out here. Speaking of Alex Pereira, I want to see him fight John Jones. If Alex Pereira and John Jones somehow, some way figure out how to get in the octagon, Alex Pereira moves up to heavyweight, that would be the fight everyone would want to see, because I think Pereira could beat John Jones. The only thing I'm worried about when it comes to Pereira facing John Jones is a pretty good wrestler, and Alex Pereira is not really great at wrestling. He has decent takedown defense, but he struggles against wrestlers. In his career, he struggled against wrestlers historically in his career. That's a super fight that I would want to see. Now, Dana White has talked about, there's a super fight in the making. Alex Pereira and John Jones is that super fight to make, in my opinion. And it needs to happen when John Jones recovers from injury, because no offense to Tom Aspinall, but Tom Aspinall will lose to John Jones pretty easily And I think that's going to be John's return fight, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's going to be his return fight. It's not really a fight that I would be excited for at all. I mean, Aspinall is a decent fighter, but at the same time, he is the interim champion. And when John Jones was away from the sport for 3 years, he submitted Cyril Gane in 1 minute and 30 seconds. That's how long it took him. And that's why he's the GOAT of MMA. And he's going to be in better shape when he comes back. He said that. If he didn't get hurt, he would have fought Stipe Miocic. And in my opinion, I think John would have retired. Personally, I think he would have retired. But now he has to come back. He wants to make the comeback now. But there's a lot on the cards this year for John Jones. And I think Alex Pereira could very well be incorporated in that. Now, this is what everyone has been waiting for. Conor McGregor announced his return. Finally, the notorious one is coming back to the octagon for International Fight Week to face off Michael Chandler. Finally, this fight was supposed to happen in December, but since Conor McGregor was not in the USADA pool, then he cannot fight Chandler. He just couldn't. He wasn't allowed to. And they were targeting April, UFC 300, him and his team, to come back. But McGregor would only be in the USADA pool for 4 out of the 6 required months. So his return date got pushed to the summertime, which is fine because now we get to see him at 185 pounds. He becomes the first fighter ever to fight at 4 different weight classes: featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, and now middleweight. I don't know how he's going to look at 185, but it's definitely going to be very interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see how Michael Chandler responds because Michael Chandler has not fought in a while. The last time he fought was when he kicked Tony Ferguson in the face, which was disgusting. He hasn't fought since. He's been waiting on Conor to come back, make his mark, and say, hey, I'm going to fight at a certain date. And there's been a lot of speculation about McGregor. I don't know how he's going to look. I think he's going to look better than people expect him to look in the octagon when he comes back. I think his striking is still going to be very, very elite. His kickboxing. I don't know about his speed, though, because at 185, he's definitely not going to be nearly as fast as he used to be. And he is getting a little bit older, mind that. But at the same time, we've never seen him fight at this weight class, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Conor McGregor. Now, another guy that announced his return to the UFC, which is very shocking to me, is Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal is like a big name. He's not like a champion. He was the former BMF champ. Only 9 months. Only 9 months out of the game, and he wants to be back. He's a little older. He's like 37-ish, 38. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. I know he's like, higher 30s? Like, I know he's like higher 30s. But what is there left for Masvidal to do? I mean, he lost a lot of fights at the end of his career. It was tough for him. He was getting knocked out by Usman. He lost to Covington. I mean, in Covington, we saw how he looked against Leon Edwards. I don't really know what else there is to do for Masvidal. Now, I'm going to throw this out here. There's one possibility for Masvidal. Masvidal and Conor McGregor should fight. Since Masvidal returned to the octagon, he's like, I'm going to return. Masvidal and McGregor should make this crazy fight. Press conferences would be insane. Conor McGregor would want that fight. It's an easy fight for Conor personally because Masvidal is not a threat to anybody in my personal opinion. But I want to see Masvidal versus McGregor. Make it happen, Dana White. That is the fight that that's like the closest thing you can get to like Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. Because we know Nate Diaz is probably not going to come back. Now, the world may shock us this year. Nate Diaz could. He's expressed interest in coming back, but I just don't know what else Nate Diaz can do. But I want to see that fight. Dana White, I want to see that fight. Now, let's talk about the 3 fights that are coming up to start the year. So January 20th, which is the fight that's coming up in 18 days now where I'm recording this. Sean Strickland and Dricus Duplessis are finally throwing hands. January 20th, throwing hands for the middleweight title. Now, we all know what happened at UFC 296, where Sean Strickland asked a little girl to move out of the way, and then he jumped over and started hitting Duplessis, started mauling him. Now, the fact that these two are that close to each other for a public event like that is kind of mind-boggling because, like, you know they're fighting in a month. Like, you know something's going to happen. And a guy as crazy as Sean Strickland, I love the guy, but he's a crazy man. Like, he does whatever he wants, and he does not care. And this is that one example of, oh, maybe we shouldn't have sat Sean Strickland literally a row in front of Duplessis. That's it. Third row, second row, first row. Strickland, Duplessis. Like, you cannot do that. You cannot have them that close. But the build-up for that fight now has been absolutely insane. Like, that fight is going to sell an insane amount of pay-per-views. I guarantee you that. And I think Sean Strickland's going to win. I think he's taking it personal because there's like a lot of things going on with Duplessis saying how his parents beat Strickland as a child, which, I mean, that's a little far if you ask me when it comes to trash talking. And I think Strickland's taking it personally because Strickland has a six-pack. Like, he looks ripped right now. Under a month into the fight. Like, there's only under a month to go in training camp, and literally he looks shredded. Like, I've never seen Sean Strickland with a six-pack. When he beat Israel Adesanya, he did not really have a six-pack like that. So, like, I'm just looking at, like, him and being like, wow. Like, I would not want to fight that man with a six-pack. Duplessis is a good fighter, but I think Strickland is... You know how it is when a guy becomes champion, he just gets exponentially better. Like, that's how it works in the UFC and fighting in general. They just take their game to another level. That's how it works. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now in February, Alexander Volkanovski is going to take on Ilia Tapa. I'm sorry if I pronounced that name incorrectly, but Tapa is undefeated. This man's a beast. I think it's like 12 out of his 14 fights have been finishes. Like, that's nuts. That's nuts. He's coming off a win against Josh Emmett. Unanimous decision. Volkanovski is coming off probably the biggest loss of his career. He took that fight against Islam 12 days notice. I'll give him an excuse there because I believe if Volkanovski had a full training camp for that, I think he would have done a lot better. But, you got to be able to take risks like that and live with the results, and that's exactly what Volkanovski will do. And I think this will be a more close fight than people anticipate because Tapa is a very good striker. He can also wrestle. Like, he's not bad on the ground. And I think him and Volk are going to be trading shots for a couple of rounds. I think this fight could go decision. Now, I'm not saying Volkanovski has lost his edge because he's by far been the best featherweight for the past, 2-3 years now. But I think this will be his toughest fight in a minute. When he fought Yair Rodriguez in July, I knew he was going to win that. I didn't think that was really a difficult fight for him. But Volkanovski's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder, but he's fighting someone who's never lost in the octagon. So that's something that I think he really needs to watch out for. It's going to be an interesting fight. Now, a fight that I think will be interesting enough is Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley in March. That fight is interesting for one reason only, because Chito Vera is the only guy to beat the Sugar Show. Sean O'Malley's one loss is against Chito. Now, I think O'Malley's going to come in here and just absolutely flatline the guy. I don't think Chito has a chance at all. O'Malley destroyed Aljamain Sterling. And personally, I thought that was a 50-50 fight. And he just landed that clean punch. That's the thing. O'Malley's striking and reach at bantamweight is insane. His height. He's 5'11". He's a big dude for bantamweight. He's a big dude. I would personally want to see Sean O'Malley move up to featherweight later in this year. Potentially, I don't know if this super fight would happen. Volkanovski versus Sean O'Malley. Let me know what you guys think of that super fight possibility. I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility. It could happen. I'm not saying it will, but there's a couple of super fights that I'm like thinking of because Dana White said there is a super fight in the making this year. It's either going to be John Jones versus Alex Pereira, or it's going to be Sean O'Malley versus Alexander Volkanovski, or it's going to be Leon Edwards versus Islam Makhachev. Those are the three super fights that I have in my head that I think could happen in 2024. One of those will happen. One of them. But man, UFC 2024, whew, Dana White is going to be cooking with some gas. Like he's going to be making up some fights. Like there's going to be there are things to look forward to this year. They really are a lot of things to look forward to this year. And I'm going to say one more thing before I end the pod here. I think Tony Ferguson should retire. I think he really should. I mean, he's lost like 8, 9 fights in a row. I mean, it's getting bad. And Paddy Pimblett, he is sorry. Like, I get it. He's a big sell, but like, he's not that good. He's really not. I think he's way overrated. Like, for him to not finish Tony Ferguson, that's bad. And in Paddy's fight before that against Jared Gordon, I thought Jared Gordon won that fight. I think Paddy got lucky in the decision. I think the judges gave him that one. But Paddy is overrated. He's so overrated. He's so overrated. Who is his next fight? Ah, man. I mean, I don't really know. Like, Paddy could fight. He's not going to fight for the belt yet. I don't really know who Paddy could really fight. I mean, I saw him and Tupuera going at it in the press conference. He's definitely not going to fight Islam. He's not good enough. I don't know who Paddy's going to fight. It's probably going to be an easy fight once again. Build his confidence up. I think he talked about fighting Rafael dos Anjos, I think. If I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on this, but I think he might have said that in his press conference. Or not his press conference, his post-fight interview. So I wouldn't be surprised about that one. But, I mean, it's another old guy. So, like, I'm not going to really, like, take that. I'm only going to take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to be like, okay. I'm waiting for him to finish somebody. That's what I'm waiting for Pimblett to do. And he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't done it. But let me know what you guys think should happen in 2024 for the UFC. What fights you guys want to see. What fights need to be made. And then also let me know what you think on my thoughts about what could happen this year in the UFC, because there's a lot of possibilities. There's always possibilities. You just got to throw them out there. But I'm your host, Jackson Burleson. Let me know what you guys think of this episode. Hit the subscribe button, like the video, and also share it with some of your friends that are UFC guys. See what they think. See what kind of input they want to put into this episode in the comment section. But I'm your host, Jackson Burleson, and I thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode of the Take Podcast. 2024 is here, baby. Expect some big things. Let me know what you guys want to see in 2024. Any ideas? Let me know what you guys think. But I appreciate you guys listening to the episode. I'm Jackson Burleson. Peace out.
Talk to me, baby. Talk to me nice. I'm from another world, baby, yeah. Right way paradise. They think I'm way too cold, cause I put my heart up on